everybody, what's going on? This is Sam from Historic Travels and welcome to another video. And as always, before we get started today, I'd just like to take a quick moment to welcome all my new subs and to thank everybody who's been leaving me comments and messages down below. Thank you guys so much, I appreciate it. And if you would like to take a couple extra steps to help support the channel a little bit more, there's a merch store and a Patreon for this channel in the links below. Thank you guys so much for all your support. Okay guys, so the time has finally come to continue the story of the Titanic sister ship, the RMS Olympic. Now guys, we are starting to get close to the end of the Olympic's life. When we last left the Olympic, the Great Depression was just about to begin, and this would have a massive impact on how the operations of the Olympic would continue for the foreseeable future. So without any further ado, let's begin today's topic. On October 24, 1929, the stock market crashed, signaling the beginning of the Great Depression. This would be one of the worst economic disasters in human history. Jobs were lost all over the world. In one day, on the day the stock market crashed, the U.S. lost more money than what was spent throughout the entirety of World War I. Unemployment was at a record high. People were struggling just to provide food for their families. So as you can see, this would have a great impact on businesses, and this would also include the White Star Line and the operations of the Titanic sister ship, the RMS Olympic. In the years leading up to the crash of 29, the White Star Line was already having issues with getting passengers on board the Olympic. You see, the popularity of this ship was slowly starting to fade around 1927, 1928, because the public was getting interested in these brand new German and French liners that were currently being developed. People preferred to travel on these fancier, newer ships than they did the Olympic, so the White Star Line was already having issues. And this was only made worse by the crash of 29. When the Great Depression hit, it was a huge blow to the shipping industry, and that also means it was a huge blow to the Olympic. You see, before the crash of 29, total number of passengers per year on all ships, there averaged around 1 million passengers that were doing the transatlantic voyage each year. Now remember, this means all ships with all shipping companies per year, not just the White Star Line. But after the crash of 29, this number dropped by half. So now you have roughly 500,000 people doing the transatlantic voyage each year. And then on top of that, you have a huge amount of increased competition for the Olympic. So all these newer, fancier ships are trying to steal passengers from the Olympic, and the Olympic was having a more and more difficult time keeping its ridership up during this difficult period. So honestly, the future wasn't looking that good for the Olympic at this current time. So yeah, the future definitely isn't looking very good for the Olympic at this point, although things are about to get much worse. You see, what everybody on board the Olympic didn't realize is that in less than a month after the crash of 29 occurred, the Olympic and all of those who sail on her would soon bear witness to one of the worst natural disasters in Canada's history. On November 18, 1929, the Olympic was steaming west from Europe, bound for New York City, when all of a sudden, at roughly 5 p.m. in the afternoon, the ship began to vibrate and shake violently. Now this shaking continued for roughly 2 minutes, and the shaking was so bad it was knocking cabinets over on board the Olympic, dishes were falling off the tables on the ship, people were stumbling and wobbling around. They had no clue what was going on. Then after the 2 minutes of shaking was up, everything returned to normal, the ocean quit vibrating, and the vessel continued on without any major damage. So now that begs the question, what was this shaking? So as it turns out, when this shaking began, the Olympic was sailing very close to the general area at which the Titanic went down. So I'm sure some of the passengers on board the ship thought it was an iceberg. And they may have went up on deck and looked around, didn't see anything, and then they were like, okay, that was weird, and then just continued on with their lives. So that begs the question, what was this? As it turns out, the Olympic was extremely close to the epicenter of a massive underwater earthquake. More specifically, this was the famous 1929 Grand Banks earthquake. And this earthquake would soon send a massive tsunami towards Newfoundland, where it would do an unimaginable amount of damage to Newfoundland's coastline. Now, the tsunami generated by this earthquake was huge. There were reports of bigger waves as far south as South Carolina. But keep in mind, the damage in these areas was minimal, if there was any at all. I couldn't find any record of any damage. But still, Newfoundland definitely did get hit the worst. And out of all the coastlines in Newfoundland that was affected by this tsunami, the worst was the Barren Peninsula, because this is the landmass of Newfoundland that was closest to the earthquake's epicenter. Around 2 hours after this earthquake struck and the Olympic had its little shaking, that tsunami struck Newfoundland, washing away any houses or buildings that were on the coastline closest to the earthquake. It's estimated that around 27 to 28 people were killed when this tsunami hit, and this tsunami left thousands homeless. So, as you can plainly see, this tsunami was definitely a horrible, horrible natural disaster. For the next couple of years, things didn't really improve much for the Olympic. The White Star Line was still having issues getting passengers to sail on this ship due to how antiquated she was by modern-day ship standards. And due to the crash of 29, there was a huge decrease in ridership. And you also have to remember the increase in competition for the ship due to all the newer ships that were being built. Before the crash of 29, the Olympic was averaging around 1,000 passengers per transatlantic voyage, a far cry from the maximum carrying capacity that this ship could handle. Under maximum load, the Olympic could hold around 2,500 passengers. But after the crash of 29, this number decreased by more than half. So that means that each transatlantic voyage of the Olympic was now carrying roughly 500 passengers. At the end of 1932, with ridership on the Olympic still extremely low, the White Star Line decided to bring the vessel back into dry dock where they would attempt to modernize the ship a little bit so the public wouldn't think this ship was so antiquated. So basically all they did during this dry dock was they just changed around the ship's interior. Changed some rooms around a bit, added a few more staterooms. They modernized the ship a bit. I did find one picture of a very popular room on the Olympic before this retrofit, and then I found a picture of it after. The Grand Staircase, the most beautiful room on the Olympic class ships in my opinion? Well, somebody had the bright idea to paint it green. Why? Why would you do this? I would love to talk to whoever made this design decision and give them a piece of my mind. I mean, honestly, the Grand Staircase is one of the most iconic rooms on the ship. Why would you paint it green? How could you? Anyway, but yeah, this retrofit took 4 months and the Olympic was then put back into service around March of 1933. However, these changes really didn't help much. The Olympic continued to operate at a loss, and the year 1933 was one of the worst years ever for the Olympic, and in this total year, the Olympic only carried around 9,000 passengers. Remember, this ship has a maximum carrying capacity of 2,500 per voyage. And in the total year, she only carried 9,000 passengers. Despite the low ridership, the year 1933 was a pretty uneventful one for the Olympic. The vessel continued to operate smoothly, and there were no real issues with this vessel as it did its transatlantic crossings. However, that can't be said for the year 1934. In May of 1934, the Olympic was approaching New York City, more specifically May 15th, 1934. And as the vessel was approaching New York Harbor, it was roughly 11 a.m. or so, a very heavy fog moved in, greatly limiting the visibility of the Olympic. Now, when this happens, these ships use what are called light ships to help navigate into a particular harbor. For those of you who don't know, light ships are basically, think of them like portable lighthouses. These are vessels that are positioned outside of major seaports, and the purpose of these light ships is to help guide ships into a particular harbor. So in the case of this particular day, due to this heavy fog, the Olympic was in radio communication with a light ship. More specifically, it was light ship Nantucket LV-117. And the crew on the Olympic were honing in on this light ship's radio signal to help guide the Olympic into New York Harbor. Remember, the fog is so bad that the Olympic's crew could not see New York City and they could not see this light ship. However, the Olympic's crew made a fatal mistake. Instead of turning away from the light ship signal as they got close, the Olympic continued straight ahead towards the light ship. And by the time they realized what was going on, it was too late. The light ship emerged from the fog directly in front of the Olympic, and the Olympic's bow sliced right through the middle of the light ship, slicing the vessel in half and causing it to begin to rapidly sink. Now, the Olympic wasn't at all damaged by this collision with the light ship. However, even though they did stop the vessel immediately after impact, where the Olympic sliced the ship clean in two, half of the light ship was on the Olympic's starboard side and the other half was on the Olympic's port side. And with the vessel split in two, she sank in less than 30 seconds. Now, there were 11 men on board the light ship, and of those 11 men, 4 men could not escape the vessel and went down with the light ship. The Olympic's crew managed to rescue 7 men from the water. However, 3 more died from their injuries. So in total, there would only be 4 survivors from the Nantucket light ship collision. boy, I tell you, the Olympic definitely did have a difficult time throughout its career in terms of how many vessels this ship would collide with. And you know, to be honest, when you really think about it, I'm amazed that this vessel even made it to her eventual retirement and scrapping. I mean, think about how much this ship went through, and she survived all of it. I mean, I tell you, the Olympic definitely did earn the nickname Old Reliable. All right, everybody, well, hey, I think this is a good place to stop the video for now. Be sure you tune in next time for the final episode in the Olympic Timeline series. In the next episode, we're going to cover the retirement and eventual scrapping of the RMS Olympic. All right, everybody, well, hey, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all for being here. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe. And all right, everybody, well, hey, you all have a good evening, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks to Patreon Captain level supporter Callum Whaley. Thank you so much for all the support, man.